Hi everyone, today we're going to be discussing 3 history curriculum that are very popular. That's The Story of the World, Our Island Story and A Child's History of the World. And these different books are used widely in classical and Charlotte Mason homeschools, as well as other homeschools as well. So I want to show you what the books look like inside. I want to explain some of the differences and similarities between them to hopefully help you make a decision of which book or which books would best suit your family. As always, there is a coordinating blog post to go along with this video, which has more details about the comparison between these 3 books, and it also has my personal feelings about why studying history is so important. So if you want a bit more information and a bit more detail, then please head over to that coordinating blog post. I will leave the link for that in the description box below. So if we start with The Story of the World, this was written by Susan Wise-Bauer, who famously wrote The Well-Trained Mind. And this book has been created to go along with a classical model of education, but you will also find many Charlotte Mason homeschools using this book and enjoying it. So each chapter is about 3 to 4 pages long. Within it there are nice black and white illustrations, some maps as well, and it's also worth noting that this book does contain mythology and biblical stories, so you may want to pre-read ahead to check that everything's suitable for your own personal worldview. The whole series has 4 volumes, so this is the first volume, volume 1, which covers ancient times. There's 4 volumes running through from ancient times all the way through to modern times, and the setup of each book is similar. To go along with this main text, there is also an activity book, which I will show you as well. So if we take a look in the activity book, now the activity book corresponds with the, what would you call this, along with the main text. So for every chapter in here, you have a corresponding chapter in here. And this book is fantastic. So if we have a look at this one, so this is chapter 3. So it corresponds with chapter 3 in this book. And it gives you cross-references to various encyclopedias. It gives you additional history reading and corresponding literature suggestions. It also gives you review questions. So if you are the type of homeschool that likes to give questions at the end of the chapter and say, to check comprehension, then it gives you options for questions that you could ask and the answers. It also gives you example narrations, which is very useful if you're a Charlotte Mason homeschooler. The next page, so this is all still corresponding with that same chapter in the main text. It also gives map work, which I'll show you in a minute, colouring pages, and then some possible craft projects that you can do. So this has 3 different crafts that you can do that correspond with that chapter, and it gives you the materials you need and the directions for that. And in the back of this book is where you will find all the maps and the colouring pages that you need, so you would just photocopy them or reproduce them within your own family as you need. I thought this book was a fantastic resource. All in all, I think I found this book I had mixed feelings about this curriculum. I felt that although my children enjoyed it, they found it a lot of fun and they seemed to look forward to the lessons, they didn't actually retain the information that we were studying, which was a concern to me. And I felt that there was probably 2 reasons for that. The first reason is the way that the book is written. It's conversational, it's modern, it's easy to understand, but it lacked some kind of depth. There was something that was missing that other living books have, and the children just didn't seem to form those connections and those relations with what we were reading, and they didn't retain it. The second thing, which perhaps is connected to the lack of retention, was the fast pace of it. I found it frustrating myself, and I think the children probably did, was how fast paced it was. It's covering history from across the world through a very large period of time, and I felt like it went too fast. Now looking back, of course, I could have just slowed it down myself. Instead of taking a year to do this book, I could have completed it in 18 months or 2 years and used some of the extra resources from here. But despite that, I felt like, although it's a fantastic book and it's perfect for people who are new to homeschooling and new to teaching history, because it kind of guides you through it, I also felt like it was lacking, and that's why we moved on to something different this year, which I'm going to show you now. It's also worth pointing out, if I didn't mention this before, that All 4 volumes are laid out in a very similar way, so you can get a sense of how volume 2, 3 and 4 will look inside, although I have heard in the homeschooling grapevine that there are less hands-on projects in the later volumes than compared to volume 1, so that's worth bearing in mind. So if I just show you the next book. The next book that we're going to be looking at is Our Island Story. This book I first came across on the Ambleside online curriculum list. So this was for year 1, year 2, possibly year 3 as well. So this is the history of Britain. Actually, it's more like the history of England, if I'm perfectly honest. It takes a worldview of English history rather than necessarily British history, and of course it takes a Christian worldview as well. So if we have a look inside, the chapters are a little bit longer. There's a little bit more text, but some of the chapters have beautiful hand-drawn, hand-painted illustrations like that. The language itself is much richer. There's a lot more depth to the language, and some children might struggle with that, if I'm honest. At first, it will take some time to adjust, but it's not impossible. The language it's not Elizabethan English, it's just a little bit older than what we're used to in modern day. The way that it is written is there's a lot of focus on character. There's a lot of focus on the characters within the story. So you're not just looking at the history of a country or an event. You're focusing on the actual people and their characters. And I really appreciated that. And I think it helped the children as well to retain what we were reading about. Like the Story of the World, this book is written from a Western worldview. As I said, it's English worldview. There's also some biblical stories in here. There's some mythology. So Our Island Story, it covers history from prehistory, I believe, the mythology of Our Island, all the way through to Queen Victoria, I believe, at the back. Also within the book there are some lovely poetry quotes. Shakespeare is quoted, so you could actually tie that in with your own poetry readings at home, whatever memorization work you might be doing. There is also a list at the front, if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. A list of all the kings and queens from Edward the Confessor onwards. So if you are memorizing the monarchs, then that would be useful to you as well. So all in all, I felt this book was beautifully written, a beautiful book, and definitely something that I want my children to read or be exposed to in some way if I can. But we had to stop using it after about 6 months because my children were finding the language a little bit tough. And I think it's something that you need to work towards if they're not used to it already. But it's something that I hope to reintroduce at a later stage. And also it's also worth noting that because this is just the history of the UK, particularly from an English perspective, you would probably need to supplement this if you're using it with some other kind of world history book or something from another worldview, or, I mean, depends on what your own values and beliefs are, but it probably would need some supplemental material. This is a kind of book that I enjoy reading by myself. And because of that, I feel like you could absolutely class this as a living book. This is the sort of book that I pick up and read for my own enjoyment, whereas the other books, this book in particular, I wouldn't pick this up for my own reading. But Our Island Story, I absolutely love reading the stories in here myself. The next book that I want to have a look at is A Child's History of the World. And this book was actually written by the late headmaster of the Calvert School in Baltimore. So this book is much more modern in its language, but it's written in, I would say, in quite rich English language. It's certainly not dumbed down. You'll find this book recommended in Ambleside online again, and in one of the book lists, I think perhaps 2 or 3 of the years, in Bookshark as well, which is also a literature-based homeschool curriculum. So it's widely used and appreciated amongst homeschoolers, and I'm just going to show you a little bit of what it's like inside. So each chapter is 3, 4, 5 pages long. There are some very simple black and white illustrations. This book doesn't tend to have as many maps as Story of the World. It also doesn't have an accompanying activity book. It is written from a Christian Western worldview, but I felt when I was reading it to my children that it was very respectful of other faiths and of other people. I didn't feel that it was belittling or in any way like that. It's written in a conversational style as if the author is talking directly to the child, which is quite engaging. This book also does contain mythology and biblical stories, so that's worth noting as well. It covers history from... Well, I like the introduction actually, it's about what history is all about, which is lovely. But then it covers prehistory, again, all the way through to modern age. I believe the Cold War is where it ends off. And it's covering world history, this book. It's not covering just Britain, this is world history. And so, as you can see, world history from all of time within one book is going to be difficult to cover. So a lot of historical events are either missed out or skimmed over. So again, if you're just using this book, you might want to supplement. But all in all, I think this is a great book to begin world history with your children. And much like Our Island Story, there is a focus on the people or a person, a historical figure, and you focus on their character. And it raises, I like the way that the author has raised questions within it. So there is a lot of discussion that's possible at the end of each chapter. So the way we use this is we read a chapter and then my children will narrate what they understand from it. And then we'll have a little discussion about the character traits or some of the events that might have happened. So rather than actually using this book, we have been enjoying the audiobook version on Audible. It's brilliant. The narrator is fantastic. He reads it really well. It's very entertaining, very engaging. I'll leave the link to that audiobook in the description box below. If you sign up with Audible, if you're not already with Audible and you sign up, you will get a free trial and you'll get that book for free. So I'll leave that for you in the description box below. So as I said, we're still using this book. This is planned as well for next year, but we're actually using two different books, and I will make another video about what we're actually using this year for history. And it's slightly unusual. It's a little bit different from these three main books that you will find mentioned frequently. It's some books that I've discovered through various means that I'm excited to show you, and I'll make another video about that later. So don't forget, if you want more information about these books, about my own personal experience with them, a bit more of an in-depth review, and why teaching history is so important in the education of our child, particularly from a Charlotte Mason perspective, then please do check out the coordinating blog post that goes along with this video. If you have any questions at all, I'd be very happy to answer them for you. Please leave them for me in the comments below. And please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.